I'm not even sure. I've seen it closer to the $2,000 price point. Lectric is now including, which I simply haven't seen anywhere near this price point, a torque wrench. All right, there's 1,300 watts, 1286, and 20 miles an hour. That was extremely fast. This is what I thought might happen. I might not even need the torque multiplier. This is the Lectric XPress 2, the next generation of an e-bike that really just aimed to be the best e-bike in its class. But now it's even better. You see, before we had a torque sensor, now you can switch between them. It has their new display, a better front suspension fork. It even has a better drivetrain than before. They say it's 99% quieter than the previous generation. And for those of you who don't like things just black or white, well, there's some updates for you too. In this review, I will walk you through everything you need to know. We'll dive into all the components. I'll walk you through step by step of that new display. Then we'll put tires to pavement. We'll see how that new motor performs, see if it's any quieter. And finally, I'll wrap things up with the pros and cons because let's face it, there are always considerations. But first, let's take a closer look. And before I forget, there's actually two models of the XPress 2, a high step and a Step-Thru. Before we jump into the differences though, let's talk pricing. The XPress 2 is priced at $13.99, and you can find up-to-date pricing and currently included accessories by clicking the link down in the description. Also, if you decide to buy, using that link or scanning the QR code on your screen now is a free and easy way to support the channel. Thank you so much for your support. I've been doing this almost 6 years and I want to keep doing it for 6 more. So with that, let's talk about the high step versus the Step-Thru. Both models weigh in at just about 64 pounds. The high step has this traditional diamond frame. They say it's good for riders 5'4" up to 6'4". I'm 6 feet tall with a 32-inch inseam, and my wife is 5'5". She also fit. So besides the standover height, you have more straight handlebars with a slight swoop to them on the high step versus the generously swept back handlebars on the Step-Thru, as well as that adjustable stem, which I'll show you in a second. And then of course, this being the Step-Thru, it's just so much easier to get your leg over. So instead of swinging your leg over on the high step, you can step through the frame on the Step-Thru. The Step-Thru accommodates riders all the way down to 5'2" up to 6'3". So go with this one if you're on the shorter side. But as a taller rider, I can still get full leg extension. And check out my wife, who's 5'5", and notice the more upright riding position. Color options on the Step-Thru: Raindrop Blue, which you see here, and Stratus White, Pine Green, or this Tempest Gray. Both have a weight capacity of 300 pounds. For the purposes of this review, I will move the high step away, but let me know which one you would buy down in the comment section. Are you a high step fan or a Step-Thru fan? Brakes are 2-piston hydraulic. They come from Star Union. Those are paired with 180mm rotors, front and rear. Tires are 27.5 by 2.1 inches wide, street tread with a reflective sidewall. With this new suspension fork, there is a different through axle. It's actually really slick. It makes assembly super easy. Check out our assembly video on these bikes, but you simply release the lever. And this is unlike any through axle I've seen. And then if you wanted to remove the front wheel, you just push in and slide out. There's no threads here. Opposite when you attach it, push it in, make sure it's tightened enough here, and then clamp closed. There's plastic fenders, front and rear. So here's one of the most noticeable changes: SR Suntour XCM 32 front suspension fork, 80mm of travel. I'm not even sure. I've seen it closer to the $2,000 price point. This is what you can expect. Preload adjustment on the left, lockout on the right. The front light runs off the main battery. Rear running light, when you hit the brakes, there's more lights, and then you have turn signals. Cable management through the frame. Here's that adjustable stem. Say if you're sharing the bike or just want to change your riding position, slide up and pull up. And so basically you can dial this into your liking. Maybe you want them further in front of you. You want to be a little bit more hunched over. Or if you want them all the way up and closer to you, you can do that too. I like more of a happy medium right around here, and snap to close. We've got matching hydraulic disc brake levers with motor cutoffs, locking ergonomic rubber grips, a left-hand thumb throttle, the best cell phone mount on the market, available at shop.ebikeescape.com. If you haven't already, check this and our other high-quality e-bike accessories out. Your purchase really helps us out. On the right side, you have Shimano's 8-speed trigger shifter. Next, the 5-button control pad and the display. Power button in the center, pedal assist up and down, and turn signals left and right. When we get to it, to go into the advanced settings, you'll hold pedal assist up and down at the same time. Let's turn the display on. Lectric on boot up. This is their updated display. Battery capacity in the top right-hand corner, it goes by 10% increments. Speed front and center, pedal assist below that, off, eco, tour, sport, sport plus, and finally turbo. You can turn the lights on by holding pedal assist up, and you can engage walk mode by holding pedal assist down. You have turn signal indicators left and right. Tap again to turn them off, or after 20 flashes, they automatically turn off. You can get additional information by hitting the power button. I love that you can still see your pedal assist level and current speed, but you also have cadence, trip time, trip distance, and odometer. Tap it again and you get input power, motor power, amps, and voltage. Hit it again to bring you back to the main screen. Let's go into the advanced settings. Pedal assist up and down at the same time. First we have screen brightness, 1, 2, or 3. Next, auto off or sleep time, distance units, trip time, motion aware or elapsed time, tire size, leave that one alone. Next is bike classification, class 1, 2, or 3, or California class 3. Assistance level, there's the standard torque multiplier, or if you want power more easily, you can select the increased torque multiplier. I'll talk about how that feels in the first-person riding footage. Next is pedal sensor. Select between the cadence or the torque sensor, your choice. Throttle, pedal assist toggle. You can make pedal assist active or inactive. Same goes with the throttle. Next is throttle output. You can limit the amount of power you get from the throttle in each pedal assist level, or just have full access to it. I'll demonstrate this as well. Then there's throttle zero start, whether you want throttle active from a standstill or not. You can change walk mode. The light operation, you can have them flash if you want, which is a nice option. And finally, you can reset the odometer. There is a USB-C port located beneath the display, and that's it for the controls and display. On the Step-Thru, there's 3 mounting points on the down tube and 2 more mounting points on the C tube. Another one of our popular products, our adjustable water bottle cage. It can fit huge, massive water bottles and hold them securely, so be sure to check this one out as well. Let's remove the battery. Keyhole on the left here. Turn to the left to release slightly. Then there is a button that's right here. You can get an idea of the capacity by hitting this button right here. It's a 48 volt, 14 amp hour battery. The battery itself is certified to UL 2271. The entire bike's electronics are certified to UL 2849. Charger port on the left side. Charge it in the bike or when it's removed. And that battery is charged with the included 2 amp charger, so 7 hours to charge it up from empty. And besides a couple zip ties and Allen wrenches, Lectric is now including, which I simply haven't seen anywhere near this price point, a torque wrench, so you can actually assemble your bike properly. No more do you have to take it to a bike shop, unless you're not comfortable, of course, to make sure everything is torqued down to spec. And so the way it works is actually when you're putting torque on the bolts, there are numbers here to give you an idea of the torque spec. That is super cool, especially for a direct-to-consumer company. To put the battery back in, terminals first. and simply snap into place. Included is Lectric's sleek saddle. I highly recommend our suspension seat post if you're looking for more comfort. There's plastic pedals, but check this out, they're quick release. That's for easy assembly. I can do it with one hand even. Rear mounted kickstand, a rear rack with a 60-pound capacity. The motor is 750 watt nominal, 1,310 watts of peak power, 85 newton meters of torque. They've stepped up their game with the derailleur, now Shimano Altus. 11 to 34 teeth in the rear, again 8 speeds. And up front, 46 teeth. Nice chainstay protector. With that, let's get into some first-person riding footage. I'll walk through all the pedal assist levels. We'll talk torque versus cadence. We'll take it up our hill climb test. Let's see how the bike does. Let's see how Lectric did. I'm on the Step-Thru. That's just what I prefer, a nice upright riding position, comfortable ride through the city. And don't let this frame fool you. Of course, it's the same motor, but I think we're going to have a lot of power here. We'll see though. All right, I have the motor power and watts up. We will do throttle only from a stop. 3, 2, 1, throttle only. All right, there's 1,300 watts, 1286, and 20 miles an hour. That was extremely fast. Now I had it in turbo. If you remember from the walk around, you can control the throttle, so if you want to have less power in the lower pedal assist levels, you can, or just full access to the throttle, that's fine too. Just make sure you're ready for it because as we just saw, it is a lot of power. So in Eco now, we'll start from a stop. So this is going to be a little bit more of a gentler takeoff. All right, there we go, just 200 watts, not straight to 1,300. All right, holding us at 219 watts, cruising up in speed just a little bit. I think having control over the throttle is important, especially on bikes with thumb throttles, because you don't have any modulation like you would do on a twist grip throttle. But if you'll notice, we are just creeping up in speed with the 200 watts. It is not limited by speed. We will just get 200 watts, or if we hit the top speed of 20 miles per hour. Still at 15, 16. So if you want a little bit more of an accessible ride, that is an option. Let's go into Tour just to show you. That's about 540 watts. And of course, it's going to be a little bit easier to hit 20. There's 17, 18, 19. There's 20, okay. And then of course, Sport, let's see what the wattage output is. Looks like 800 watts. And then Sport Plus, 1082. And then Turbo, that gives you the full 1,300 watts or just shy of that. So that is the throttle. Just crazy how powerful this bike really is. We'll start with the cadence sensor in Eco. First gear, about a half turn or so to get the motor engaged. Now remember, a cadence sensor, it simply senses whether you're pedaling. If you are, it will give you motor power. How much? Well, that depends on your pedal assist level. In the case of Eco, just getting 166 watts. Similar to what we saw with the throttle, I'm just going to continue to just get that little bit of power from the motor. It will not stop at a speed. So we are cruising at around 11 miles an hour there. Of course, you can use a little bit of throttle to get started too. I'm in third gear, shift up to fourth as we get to 12, 13 miles an hour. And yeah, it's just going to provide that amount of power. So let's go into Tour. All right, stepping up the power quite a bit to 440 watts, 17 miles an hour. Shift up to sixth gear so I can provide a little bit of power myself. There's 18 miles an hour, 19. And again, we are just going to creep up in speed. Let's go into Sport. All right, shift up to seventh gear. I do have it in class 3 mode. All right, 22. Not putting a whole lot of my own power in right now. Let's shift up to eighth gear, the highest gear. There we go. So a comfortable cadence at 25, 26 miles an hour. 643 watts. Let's go into Sport Plus. All right, just shy of 1,000 watts there, getting close to the top speed of 28 miles per hour. I think we'll probably hit it. There's 27. All right, let's go into Turbo. And there we go, 28 miles an hour. And that's where you get the full power. So that is the cadence sensor. But what's cool is this bike also has a torque sensor. So we'll switch it to the torque sensor. Let's start in eco, first gear. All right, and definitely more responsive than the cadence sensor to get started. So a torque sensor, what it does is it measures how much pedal power you're putting in and amplifies it. I like to explain it as kind of rewarding you for your extra effort, but still depending on the pedal assist level. I have it with the standard torque multiplier, and we'll see if we need to bump that up to hit class 3 speeds. But what I love about the torque sensor on this bike compared to the cadence sensor is you can see I am just very nicely spinning my legs. I'm putting in about 60 or 70 watts. I'm getting only 53 watts from the motor. And if you remember from the cadence sensor, we were just traveling at a much higher speed. So in that way, it's a little bit more accessible. It's a little bit easier to control your speed with the torque sensor. And then, yes, you should still have a ton of power with this motor in the higher assist levels, but we'll see. So I could shift up a little bit, third gear here. So now I'll put in a little bit more effort. Now I'm putting in around 150 watts and getting closer to 100 watts from the motor. And now we're hitting that 12 or 13 mile per hour mark. But yes, I can definitely feel it in my legs. Not a ton, but definitely more work. All right, let's jump into tour now. I'm going to shift up to fourth gear. So now nice and easy, 12, 13 miles an hour, just a tiny bit of resistance on those pedals, and then a little bit more power from my legs. Getting closer to 250 watts from the motor. There's 16 miles an hour, I could shift up. All right, let's go into sport. So I'm in fifth gear. Now we're holding at 16 miles an hour without putting too much effort in, and then a little bit more power here. About 150 to 200 watts from my legs, getting up to 18 miles an hour. Let's see if we can hit 20 with a lot more effort. There's 19 and 20. All right, jumping now to Sport Plus. Wow, the acceleration from a slower start there. Could really feel that motor. It really ramped it in. So we'll see what the speed is here. I'm going to shift up to sixth gear. All right, now 20 miles an hour without breaking a sweat. Getting around 370 watts from the motor. I saw 21, 22, and then a little bit more power from my legs. I'm going to shift up into seventh gear here. 24 miles an hour. This is what I thought might happen. I might not even need the torque multiplier. All right, there's 24. And again, very moderate cadence. I'm only providing 100 watts now. All right, let's see what turbo feels like. I'm going to shift down. Let's see what it feels like from a stop. And yeah, the motor kicks on just a little bit and then really ramps in the power. I saw over 1,000 watts. All right, shifting up to sixth gear. So cruising speed, 22, 23. I'm going to shift up seventh gear, 24 miles an hour. All right, a little bit more power from my legs. There's 25. Getting closer to 1,100 watts from the motor. There's 27. And I saw 28 for a second. All right, so getting around 1,000 watts from the motor. Let's turn the torque multiplier on. And I'm curious, it actually wasn't hard to hit those top speeds. But if you want it, it's there. All right, increased torque multiplier. All right, starting in eco, I think it's pretty clear already. Going at 12 miles an hour, that was higher than when we had the standard torque multiplier. So yes, maybe if you want a little bit more power in eco with the torque sensor, you can turn that multiplier on. Though I think for a lot of people, when I ride, I like having an eco that just gives you a tiny bit of boost, especially when you're just cruising around in the city, doing greenway riding, where there's lots of traffic. All right, torque multiplier on in turbo. Let's see how we do. Fourth gear there. It's pretty much maxing out the motor power. I already saw just shy of 1,300 watts. Let me shift up. All right, so seventh gear. So yeah, with a little bit more effort, now I'm kind of seeing those higher numbers, closer to 1,200 watts. Shift up to eighth gear, which is a really nice cadence. And there's 28 miles an hour. So a little easier to hit 28 miles per hour with the multiplier turned on. That shouldn't be surprising. Let's do a quick brake test. Test out these Star Union hydraulic disc brakes at the sign here. Stopping power actually really good on these. Okay, let's talk about comfort. On the high step, if you've ridden a bike, just a normal bike, that's the posture, that's the riding position that you can expect. The traditional diamond frame, pretty much straight handlebars, a more sporty ride. But if you're into comfort, the Step-Thru, I think, is where it's at. Not only easier to get your leg over, but then you have the swept back handlebars. And then even more than that, the adjustability of the quick release. It's actually nice to be able to kind of dial it in without having a tool. And it also makes it easier for pretty much anyone to adjust who might be a little apprehensive, let's say, to touch a standard adjustable stem. So a super upright riding position. I mean, I could even bring these higher if I wanted to, but my back is really straight. Now, let's talk a little bit about the suspension. I can definitely feel it in the front there, but something to keep in mind with the geometry of this bike is that there's less pressure on your arms and your hands. So you're inevitably kind of sitting back. So you're taking kind of less of those vibrations, if you will. Now, with that being said, let's talk about this seat. It's fine, it's a basic saddle. I imagine a lot of people who are looking for comfort that a Step-Thru e-bike provides, you might want a different saddle. We have some that we recommend. But then what I would do to maximize comfort on this bike is add a suspension seat post, like the one we sell at shop.ebikeescape.com. Trust me, you won't be disappointed. Then you have a SR Suntour suspension fork up front and then a seat post suspension. So if you happen to go a little off-road, some crushed gravel, if you are capable of doing that, you are going to appreciate that. But even on flat ground like this, if there's minor bumps in the road, a suspension seat post is going to help soak those up. I won't ride any bike without one. Pothole here, let's see. I'm watching the suspension. I'm not aware of another brand that has put a SR Suntour suspension fork on a bike at this price point. All right, with that, let's get to our hill climb test. All right, let's see what the minimum speed is. The GoPro makes this hill look so much smaller than it is, so we'll put up the specs on the screen. Hit that 20 miles per hour pretty quickly. 14 miles an hour. Now is probably a good time to talk about the motor noise. Lectric has done a great job keeping these more powerful motors quieter than a lot of the competition out there. And this bike holding us at 13 miles an hour up this huge hill. There's 12. And that motor does not have that whine that you sometimes hear from powerful hub drive bikes. All right, minimum speed is 12 miles an hour, which is extremely impressive. If you've been watching the channel, I just took the juiced scramblers up this hill. Granted, those are heavier bikes, but 1700 watts of peak power, and those had a minimum speed of 14 miles an hour. But this is a bike, so let's see how it does while pedaling. We're going to leave it on the torque sensor because with the Cadence sensor, it's just so easy to get power from the motor. It's not as interesting of a test. And if you want to use the torque sensor, it's important to be able to do hills. So let's see how they did. Normally, Lectric likes to give you more power more easily, particularly in the higher pedal assist levels. So in Eco, I mean, I could make it up at 4 miles an hour, not putting in a ton of effort, but I still feel it in my legs. Let's go into Tour. Okay, so we just went from 400 watts. It went to 800 for a second, now down to 500 watts or so, going up a little bit faster, but if you can see from my legs, just a gentle cadence, cruising up. Let's go into Sport. Okay, again, getting that 800 watts and then now back closer to 500 or 600, 6 miles an hour. I can hear the motor a little bit here, working harder. So yeah, this would be perfectly adequate for going up this hill. A little bit slower, but still not bad, especially for a torque sensor. Let's go into Sport Plus. All right, it's taking over even more there. I could have shifted up even earlier, but there's third gear, and we're just getting 800 watts super easily. And then, yeah, turbo, I mean, it's pretty much just completely taking over at that point. You could be in a super low gear and just get a bunch of power from the motor. So Lectric is unique in that respect. There aren't a lot of companies that make it easy to get a lot of power from the motor in the higher pedal assist levels. Usually you have to work for it. But what I like is you don't have to switch to the cadence sensor to go up that hill. You can just leave it with the torque sensor. With that, let's get into some third-person riding footage. I'll get into the pros and cons of the Lectric XPress 2. The Lectric XPress 2 aims to be that sweet spot commuter or cruiser e-bike, giving riders features they actually want. With this iteration, the price has climbed $100, but they've made a decent bit of changes that I personally think justify the bump. At $13.99, it is incredibly well priced. But people always want to know what you get when you pay more. I'll get into that in a bit, but let's start with what I like. I usually don't focus too much on displays, but Lectric's new 3.5-inch TFT color display really modernizes this e-bike. Not just from an aesthetic standpoint, I mean just look at the last generation displays, but functionally too. The settings are easy to navigate. You can easily toggle between the torque or the cadence sensor, get more power easily with the torque multiplier, and customize the throttle output. The list goes on. Next, let's talk about assembly, which is always important for a direct-to-consumer brand. Lectric has always kept things simpler for the customer than almost any other brand, with quick-release pedals and easy-to-install through axle. I also applaud them for now including a torque wrench in the box. And yes, while the handlebars used to come pre-installed and now they don't, the process is still very straightforward. I'll never complain about name brand components, and it's surprising to see an SR Suntour XCM 32 front suspension fork with 80 millimeters of travel here. I think that component in part brought the price up. That, along with the trigger shifter and the upgrade to an 8-speed Shimano Altus derailleur, makes this perfectly adequate for recreational riding. And these components can be found on much more expensive e-bikes. The previous generation XPress 750 boasted a ton of power, and you still get that here, which I'm happy about. But now it's delivering a massive 1,310 watts of peak power, 85 newton meters of torque, all while being quieter. That's a great update. Paired with a 14 amp hour battery, Lectric's claimed range of up to 60 miles is definitely doable if you're in the lowest level of pedal assist and leaning into that torque sensor. I'm happy to see Lectric continuing to offer both the high-step commuter and step-through cruiser frames for the XPress 2, along with adding some new colors. Note that they are one size fits most. However, I was actually surprised to see that our shorter friend, who is 4'11", could still comfortably stand over the step-through model. And as a 6-foot tall rider, I still felt comfortable. So what you likely want to know is, what do you get if you spend more? And I'm talking at least $400 to $600 more. First, you might find brands with a local bike shop network where you can buy in store. Though I have to caveat that by saying Lectric has amazing customer support, and you don't have to take my word for it, just check out the Facebook groups. If you spend more, some e-bikes might include suspension seat posts, or you might get a slightly bigger battery, but also maybe not. You'll find brands with various frame size offerings or slightly lower standover heights. Then there's the advanced tech side. This is maybe the biggest one, not in terms of importance depending on who you are, but just things you get when you spend more. Being able to connect your e-bike to an app, more ride customization, security settings, over-the-air updates, or MIC-compatible rear racks. That should give you a gist of what to look for if you're trying to figure out what to buy. But if you do decide to buy any e-bike from Lectric, do me a huge favor and use our link in the description or scan the QR code on your screen right now before you check out. You'll also be able to see what accessories are currently included, as Lectric loves to throw in some freebies, which is always nice. We are viewer supported, so thank you so much for your support. Overall, Lectric's new XPress 2 delivers on the key components, with a few surprises I might add, for the $1,399 price point, but I'm curious to hear what you think Let me know down in the comments section. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.